we'll see.
That'll just be the agenda, and I'm not sure where Alan's at in terms of hearing officially back from Ben.
Yep.
Well, that is what it is.
Yeah. I'll brief you afterwards.
You're going to swear her in your office,
Yeah. I'll brief you after this stuff. Good evening, councillors. Good evening, staff. Good evening, members of the public, both joining us here in person and joining us online. This meeting is being live streamed, so thank you for anyone who's tuning in online. This is an agenda briefing. It's not a decision-making process tonight. That will occur next week. But of course, it would be remiss for me to not note that this is the first time we've been in this room without our Deputy Mayor, and for obviously anyone who does know in this room that Deputy Mayor Treslen Smith passed away last week after her brief but very strong battle with cancer. It does feel a bit different now. I know even meeting today, obviously you normally meet with Treslen every Tuesday, so it's certainly a very empty feeling of that 9 years Treslen had, and I will make some comments next week. This is just some observations in this briefing, but I'll make some formal comments next week. But 9 years Treslen served in this room, and 5 of those as deputy. Of course, most of us in here know her as an elected member, but many of us know her from our other roles within the community, as a mentor as well to many people in this room, but also a very dear friend as well, and she will certainly be very much missed. Come on in, we've just started, you're welcome, come and have a seat. Hi. So it is very sad and she will certainly be missed, and we know how much Treslen loved Bunbury, and we know how much she gave to this Bunbury community as well, so she'll be a big miss, and it's been overwhelming, the message of support both online, and I've received a number of letters and emails from all walks of life expressing their condolences for Treslen and passing on those condolences. So if the family are listening, I hope you feel the love. There's been plenty of it, and of course it has been a tough month for the family who obviously lost David a few months ago as well. Well, as I said, I will make some formal comments next week, but I think if we could just pause for a moment for that acknowledgement and just a moment of silence. Thank you. Thank you everyone for that, and Treslen's funeral will be next Thursday for anyone who wants to attend that. She also wouldn't want us dwelling on this, and she'd be telling us to get on with the job, and that's what we're here to do. We do have a process to fill the vacancy that Treslen's left, and that is 2 vacancies. So next week we will be going through the process of electing a deputy mayor. So we'll be calling for nominations next week at the start of the meeting, and we'll go through the deputy mayor process, which the CEO and manager of governance will do. In terms of Treslen's vacancy as elected member, there is provisions that allow for that set up for vacancies on councils. That process has started as the local government reforms changed a year ago. The current process is that if a vacancy occurs within 12 months of the election, then the next person in line would be offered the role. They have 5 working days to respond, and I understand that that letter's gone out. If that person is no longer eligible or doesn't take the offer, it goes to the next person in line, and that will then occur, and any process that need to go from there. If both of them don't respond, we will be having an extraordinary election to deal with that particular vacancy. Okay, on to tonight's meeting. We do have Councillor Quain joining us from Perth. I probably should have checked if you could hear us before going on that, Councillor Quain. Can you hear us? Thank you. Thanks for joining, and I can see you in the screen in front of me, Councillor. So obviously, as we go through the process, if there's any questions, just raise your hands and we'll deal with those. I've received 2 declarations of interest both on item 10.4.3 from Councillor Brown and Councillor Kozisek. They are impartial interests due to the fact that they sit on JDAP, and that item will be going to JDAP at some stage. So thank you for those. Is there any other declaration of interest for tonight's meeting? All good, thank you. We've also, councillors, received 1 deputation for tonight. So I've approved that, and we'll deal with that item when we get to it. We'll just work through the agenda itself as we work through there. We'll be there very shortly. Canella? So dealing with item 10.3.1 first, and then next week, given there might be a bit more public interest with this item, we will deal with that particular Beach Road item first. Item 10.3.1. Councillor, CEO, sorry.
Mayor, I was just going to acknowledge that Councillor Broad in particular did send some questions through that have been answered. So I don't know whether Councillor Broad wanted to make any comment in relation to those.
Yeah, 10.3.1. Any questions? Councillor Broad, you sent some questions during the day. Do you have any follow-up questions on those?
No, thank you. Everything's been answered, Mayor.
Thank you. Was there any other questions on 10.3.1? Councillor Turner?
If I can, on page 20, utilities, unfavourable variance of 534,000 due to high anticipated expenditures regarding the electricity, gas, water and sewerage. Can I get an explanation of what's caused the increase in the utilities, please? Is it like hands over?
Sure. CEO, do you have a response to that, or do you need to take that on notice?
We could probably take that on notice. What I would note, Mayor, is that even in this year's budget that's been adopted, we have amended our utility budget to reflect increased charges across the board. So the unfavourable variance would reflect that, but I don't know if the Manager of Finance wants to make any further comment.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. We'll do a more review of that and report back to Council. But I understand most of the electricity increase was in regards to the South West Sports Centre, but we will report their explanations for that to Council.
Thank you. CEO, further to
add? Mayor, the only we do have an energy project to do with South West Sports Centre that's included in this year's budget. I shouldn't say next year's budget. So hopefully that will help in reducing some of that cost as well. But there has been a general increase in those utilities, and we'll do some further work on that.
Thank you, Councillor Turner. There'll be some further information provided. Further questions, Councillor Ramesh?
Just on page 20, PR 5399, the temporary AFL infrastructure overlay, Hansoval, just $386,000. Is this for this current year, for the temporary stands, Mr. Mayor?
Yes, this is in reporting to the financial manager report ending June 30, 26, but the CEO might have some commentary around that.
Thank you. Thanks for the question. This would be in relation to costs associated with hosting the AFL game in June.
Follow up, Councillor Ramesh, yes.
Is there a long-term plan for moving on? I think Councillor Broad may have touched upon our questions, to have a permanent stand and permanent arrangement for not just for the footy, but for the other events, including concerts and things like that.
So a number of the infrastructure costs right now that are being expended by the city are being recouped through grant funding, which is the arrangement with the state government for this particular project. CEO and I did meet with the Development Commission as a bit of a debrief with AFL today, or debrief on that event, just talking about what that future may hold. And there, I think the further conversations that we need to have around what that future looks like. Is there further commitments from the state government for future games, which will obviously help council make some decisions around that, and ultimately getting a plan together which shows a schedule of events, which will certainly help us with any further requests for funding for some more permanent rather than operating or one-off things. But CEO, anything more to add on that?
Mayor, you covered that really well. I think there is the opportunity. Obviously, the AFL is something that we're keen to continue, and the conversations around the extension into another 3 years. There's also the opportunity for other sports, and we've got other sports coming to us as well that may well have infrastructure needs that we'll need to consider. So I'll do some work with the team now that we're past year 2. We had the 5.7 million that the Mayor referred to. There's some conversations we'll have with tourism principally as our state government partner, but we'll also do a bit of work on what's next, and if we were to successful in getting the additional funding, what other infrastructure might we need? If there's other sports or other activities, what other things will we need to do to enhance that facility?
Follow-up question, Councillor Ramesh, all good? Any other questions on the preliminary financial management report? Thank you. We'll move to the schedule of accounts paid, and I know, Councillor Broad, you also asked some questions on this. Have they been answered, or would you like to ask any more questions?
No, thank you, Mr Mayor. All answered.
Thank you. Questions on the schedule of accounts paid? Thank you. Sorry, excuse me. 10.3.3 is the CEO KPIs biannual report on financial strategic initiatives. Any questions? All good? Thank you. Item 10.4.1 is the adoption of the City of Bunbury City Centre parking strategy. And as was discussed a little bit earlier, there might be some wordings around some of the executive recommendation that may be adjusted in some of that, but happy to take some questions. Councillor Kozisek.
Thank you, Mayor. I have 4 questions in total, if I may.
Sure.
How much did we pay consultants to finalise the strategy? Do you want me to rattle them off and then...
Let's go one by one because it might be
Yeah,
easier,
okay.
otherwise we'll get lost. CEO,
Thank
do you have an answer to that?
I don't have that that detail with me, but happy to take that on notice, Councillor Kostek, unless the Manager of Finance. So we'll take that on notice. I know that's a question that was asked at one of the briefings as well. So,
Cool. Thank you.
Yep.
Mr McRobert did answer this one for me, but I'll ask it anyway. How many rangers do we currently employ, both full-time and part-time?
CEO?
Please.
Yep, thank you.
I'll ask the Director of Sustainable Development to answer that again.
Through you, Mayor. Thanks for the question. I believe it's 6 rangers and 2 support staff, so almost at full complement. So.
Excellent. Thank you. Question 3. Are they on the street at monitoring car parking on a daily basis?
CEO, do we have a response for that?
Thank you, Mayor. Absolutely, and there's been significant activity in terms of enforcement. I am planning to bring a briefing to elected members that just talks about the staffing and the work that's been done in getting our staffing levels to where they need to be, but also some indication of the enforcement action that is being taken on a daily basis with across the city. So I'll look to do that at one of the next strategic briefing because it has been something that we have invested in, and together with technology and now having the right resources, we can take the right approach.
Councillor Kozisek, one more.
That leads into my next question. Sorry. How much more do we need to spend to get the appropriate thorough parking data in all areas, please?
CEO?
Thank you, Councillor Kozisek. We'll include that in the briefing. There's been a fair bit of work done in terms of the technology side, which will obviously help with the data. We're looking at that as we speak, and now having a full complement. We'll look at the work that we need to do in the technology space to get an appropriate solution. Data, as the report indicates, is something we need to continually monitor, so we can see when that trend does start to change. As you know from previous presentations, City of Vincent and City of Fremantle, there's that threshold that that does indicate where you need to move. So we'll monitor that, but I'll provide that again in the briefing.
Councillor Gassett?
Mr. Mayor, I did send you a question earlier.
Yeah, do you want to, I don't have it in front of me, do you want to
I
read it out?
prefer you read it, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, sure. Any other questions? Well, I'll just find that. Councillor Quain? Just on mute there, Councillor Quain.
I emailed my questions in earlier this afternoon, and it was around two areas. And the first is really keen to know what the future parking ideas are around disabled and senior members accessing Breck when the hotel is built. I'm very keen to know what's planned in that space. And then the other area is regarding our gold parking. I'm keen to know if there's going to be any consideration for increased number of parking bays available with our increased ageing population, and would there be consideration for the senior card to be accepted as a qualifier to get the gold parking permit?
Yeah, thanks, Maria. I do know. I saw your email come through earlier, so we can potentially take those on notice, but I'm not sure if there's any commentary around gold parking at the moment, CEO, or around, I know this strategy does talk around the knowledge of the hotel and potential lack of parking, but do you want to provide any comment now? And we'll...
Yeah, I think the comment I would make, Mayor, is that, this is intended to be a guiding document that we're going to have to move iteratively through. There's lots of things that we need to break down and identify sort of bits of work that need to be done progressively. Data is one thing, the enforcement's another. How some of those conversations and consultation with that we started with the business community need to continue so that we get the right mix in the city and the surrounding streets. So I don't have any particular specific information in terms of some of the questions of Councillor Quain, so we'll take those on notice and provide those later.
Yep. Thank you, Councillor Quain. And provided to the question was received here on notice, which may be taken on notice as well. We're just talking about staff parking in the street and talking about ranges, which Councillor Kozisek has just asked some of those questions. But is there any way for the city to look at free or subsidised parking for our CBD staff in selected areas, which would help keep workers off the streets, freeing up customer parking? But then goes on to say that with these areas are safe to get to, which I'll follow up with a question myself, which I've sort of asked as well around the strategy does talk about that being an action plan of getting our long-term car parking bays more attractive, accessible, and safe to get to. And it probably gets to this particular adoption. Is there ways for us to prioritise some of these parts of this report, which might be something we can act on in a quicker way?
Thanks, Mayor. I think as we discussed today, I think that's where prior to next week we'll strengthen the recommendation and perhaps tease some of that, the work that you're talking about out, so that that's a little bit clearer. This, as I said earlier, needs to be seen as a bit of a guiding document and there's work that still needs to be done. And hopefully we can cover that off in some amendments to the recommendation that are currently before Council.
Thank you. Further, I know Councillor Broad, you had several questions as well. Do you want to ask those?
Yes, no, thanks, Mr. Mayor. They've all been answered. Thank you.
Further questions, Councillor Gassett?
I wasn't going to, but I will, Mr. Mayor. Just in the summary, I guess, we're talking about demand responsive pricing, which is, assuming that they're going to control demand rather than supply. That's one question. Second question is, if the data that was used to compile this report is not really complete, how can we rule out a multi-deck car park within the next 20 years? Got a couple more questions.
Yeah, I'll deal with the first question because I think the summary talks about price control parking. Talks of in the report talks about it quite at length around if you're having particular areas and longer stay parking options. Do you offer that as a paid option and potentially premium places as a higher paid option in the longer run? But it was very clear in the report talking about maintaining the free short-term parking for customers. So I can defer that to the CEO in a minute, but I'll touch on the second one as well. I think that's probably what some of the conversation we've had is this being a guiding document. The summary talks about doing some work on a potential business plan for a long multi-deck car park within 5 years. So I think we need to obviously what's been sort of threshed out in some of these conversations is obviously shoring up some of that data, hence where I'm suggesting around potentially some of those action plans is getting a much clearer idea on the data before committing to any sort of the longer term plans, which I think the CEO is looking to do, and potentially even with a report to come back to council about how some of those things will go. But CEO, do you have any further comment on those things?
Me, you've probably covered that, and I've probably covered that in some of the other comments. I think it needs to be seen as a guiding document. We will continue to work on the data. The report suggests that right now, and as people would remember, the City of Fremantle and the City of Vincent, there is that threshold that that we certainly don't feel that we've reached here. So, but the data will be key to continuing to tell us that, and I think this is an iterative process. We need to just continue to make some changes, and we've talked about some of those, improve the current conditions for parking, enforce, gather the data, and then continually report back to council over the every 6 months probably around where things are going, so that we keep this as a live document.
Just, so Mayor, just in terms of the way this data was collected and who was engaged, the report says summary of current parking availability. Now, is that current parking availability take into consideration the vacant premises around town, probably 20%? Or does it factor in full capacity, future residential, maybe other developments around town? Because it's very specific seems to be specific at a snapshot. But if we're going to grow the economy, should we be looking at more available parking?
Yeah, I think I'm going to step up further. I think the CEO's explained that, Councillor Gassop, to it being a monitoring process is understanding there are limitations with this current data, so how do we continue to monitor that going forward? What are some short-term solutions that we are looking to potentially endorse as we gather some further data around that? Clearly, the report talks about some of those potential developments and what those bays being taken away would do and what those percentages are. But I think that comment has been made around making that a monitoring and reporting back to council on those changes as they come. Further questions? I should notice we did have Barb and Cam here who have been running the sessions with CBD business owners the last few weeks as well. So thanks for coming along and running those sessions too. Further questions? Thank you. 10:42. Canella, come and join us first. Sorry to keep you waiting there, Canella. Thank you, and you have 10 minutes.
Thank you. Good evening, councillors, and thank you for the opportunity to speak. I'm here tonight as a ratepayer that's very concerned about the proposed sale of 89 Beach Road. But my main concern and purpose of my deputation tonight is really about how you're being asked to make this decision. Selling this land is not as straightforward, in my mind, as how it's been promoted. I'm concerned that the process that's brought us to this point and the report before you simply doesn't pass the pub test. The report and the promotion of this sale appears to come down to three things. The zoning, you've got an offer, and council decided to sell this back in 2015. But these are just three facts. They're not by themselves a public interest assessment, and to approve the sale of this land, council does need to be satisfied that this disposal is in the public interest. There's 209 submissions listed in the report, and as you know, that's on top of a petition of nearly 600 signatures, and also a whole raft of other community interest that's been expressed in various ways over the last few months. This is really significant. Yet the report before you reduces all of that input down to only 5 very broad themes, with a couple of sentences underneath each. When you actually read through all of those submissions that the community has taken a lot of time and effort to put together, a lot of consideration, they raise such a wider range of matters: housing outcomes, alternative development opportunities, traffic, pedestrian safety, drainage. There's quite a number of environmental issues, development feasibility, open space function, strategic planning, and critically, the public value of actually retaining the land. This is not simply 200 odd people saying, we don't want the trees removed. They're actually raising really legitimate questions about whether this public asset should be sold, whether the development outcome that this sale might lead to is appropriate, whether this disposal is actually the best outcome for the whole community. My own submission wasn't included in the schedule, and thank you. I understand officers have intended to rectify that. Hopefully it's come to you now. But that omission raises another question. Were there any other submissions that have been missed as well? The report says submissions received after the cut-off were not included. And within reason, why not? And how many of these are there as well? Where substantive issues receive a response in the report that says noted, the key matters are addressed in the council agenda item, that doesn't tell any of us how those issues raised have actually been considered. Then there's the zoning. Yes, it's been rezoned, and this tells us what the planning framework allows to happen. What the zoning doesn't tell us is that council must sell the land or it should sell the land. The question in this disposal is not only can the land be developed, and that's an important question, and I don't think that's been sufficiently answered. The bigger question is, should the council permanently dispose of it? They're very different questions. The same applies to the offer. The report establishes the offer falls in the valuation range. That tells us about market value, but it doesn't tell us anything about the public value. Where is the assessment of the benefits of retaining this land? It's environmental, open space, recreational, landscape, and strategic value. Where is that compared to the benefit of receiving $840,000 in a $1.15 million budget? That information and assessment, it wasn't in the public notice. I think it should have been, and it's not in this report. Then there's this ongoing reference back to a decision from 2015. Yes, council did make a resolution to pursue disposal 11 years ago, but a decision made in 2015 is not a current public interest assessment. So much has changed since 2015, and you're allowed to change your minds. Environmental requirements, community expectations, planning priorities, the city's own strategic framework, and its approach to open space and urban greening, it's all changed. The city is also currently preparing, and I shouldn't have to stand here and remind you of this, an open space planning strategy. This is looking at the supply of open space and recreational assets across the city as housing and population density, and hence demand on the assets that we've already got increases. Why is this disposal being pursued before that work is completed, and when you've got a community telling you very loudly that this land is really important to them, regardless of the zoning, as a green open space link now. More importantly, what's materially changed since 2015, and how does that affect the public interest now in 2026? The real question is not what council decided 11 years ago. This disposal is being considered today, and you've got to consider it afresh against today's policies, today's evidence, today's community expectations. That's the decision that you're being asked to make, and that's not in the report. There's also matters concerning the site itself that, to me, I don't think have been properly addressed or at least disclosed. There appears to be, for example, contaminated land advice about the site that perhaps differs from the way the city's been characterising the land. I've seen the advice that other community members have received from Department of Water, Contaminated Sites Committee, that recommends further testing should occur before the land is used for residential purposes. It's not simply a matter of a future buyer using different footings. Again, that information was not in the public notice and it's not in the report. Then there's the trees. We can all see that there's many trees on 89 Beach Road, and they're significant regardless of their species, even if only simply by virtue of their height, which is considerable, their canopy and their visual presence. But this isn't simply about whether people like the trees or not. If the significance or retention of these trees affects where the vegetation, those trees, can or cannot be removed, then that directly affects a future development approval process that hasn't been determined as yet. It affects the development potential of the site, and that potentially affects its cost and its value. If there's relevant advice about contamination, vegetation, other site conditions that could affect this future development, risk or the value, then really you've got to understand that now, and it has to be available before the decision is made. Evaluation, preferably qualified, not just general statements about these environmental factors, is required. Again, not in the public notice, not in the report. These are some of the reasons why I think this process should actually be paused, and it needs to have these issues revisited and some serious public interest factors examined and presented. So given this, I ask you to consider several questions. What evidence demonstrates that our community is better off selling this land for $840,000 rather than retaining it? Why have 210 submissions with mine been reduced to only 5 themes? And where are all these substantive issues raised in those submissions actually being considered? Where is an assessment of this against the city's own current policies? Council plan, the land rationalisation policy, the housing strategy, and how on earth does it fit with the current review of public open space provision? What's actually changed since 2015, and what is the impact of that? Has the community and all of you as elected members been given enough information and opportunity to make a properly informed public interest decision? If any of those questions can't be answered clearly and based on evidence, then respectfully I suggest that you don't have a sufficiently robust basis to make any decision in this matter. Now, just to conclude, I don't expect you all to agree with me. It's the nature of what we do. But I do think it's really reasonable for everybody to expect that this is treated for what it is. This is a really significant public interest decision about a publicly owned asset. We all own it. And I think it's also about the trust that the community places in all of you as elected members to protect our interests and our livability. For me, the answer's clear. I don't believe the land should be sold. It doesn't make any sense, and I don't think it's good planning, not looking to the future or what we need now. Regardless of where you ultimately stand on the land yourself, I stress, I think each of you have to be really confident that your decision is being properly informed, that the community's concerns have really been genuinely considered, and it's not evident at the moment. But also that you can make a decision that you can all stand by long term on behalf of the people of Bunbury. It's been said before, once the land is sold, it's gone. So please don't just ask whether you can sell it or whether you can get $840,000 for it. Please ask whether you can look us all in the eye and say that selling this piece of public land and all that it stands for was genuinely the right thing to do. Thank you.
Thank you, Kenna. Yeah, it's okay. You can clap. That's fine. Don't. That's no problems at all. Questions, members? Councillor Turner.
I have a few. With regards to the submissions, I noticed submission 113 was in support of the sale. Should that be up at the top? Because I noticed there was support and then after that objections.
Yeah, that's the way I read it, was that support ones were first and the objections later. But CEO, is there any reason why that was separated?
Not sure. I'm just trying to get to 113. But yeah, generally they're categorised that way, so that may be happy to have a look at that now.
Okay. And if I may, I noticed submission 171, 172, 173 and 174 all had the same submission. Is that because it's been the same person putting it in 4 times, or is that because there's an error?
It would be different, and I think there's a few commentaries around there that some of them are pro forma submissions, so where you've got a similar submission that's been sent as a template, and I think there was an indication there was maybe 13 of those. So
I've seen at least
but I would suggest that all of the submissions are received are all individual and separate submissions. So whether they're saying the same thing or not, it's still come from a separate person, I would envision, and that's what I'm getting the nod from.
So it is the same person?
No, sorry, different people. Every one of those submissions would be a unique submission from a different person.
Oh, okay. But just
So you
like
couldn't-
copied and pasted in a sense?
Yeah, you couldn't put just 200 different submissions in with 200 and the same things in there. So yeah, every single submission would be a unique person.
Okay. Can I also get a explanation as to why the names of the submitters and the addresses were redacted?
Reading through some other councils when I looked at their submissions in other forums, and I was noticing last week in the City Busman's thing, I think it's just common practice that's the process. It's for privacy reasons that they would be supplied. But CEO?
Thank you, Mayor. I am just reminded that under the changes to the Press Act that we are required.
Which act, sorry?
The privacy.
Oh, Privacy Act.
Yeah, that we do redact that personal information.
Unless consent's given. As I said, Councillor Turner, I was looking at an agenda from another council on a totally different matter the other week, and it was common practice to have names, addresses all redacted.
Thank you. That's the first time I've seen it, but thank you.
So changes to
And
the Privacy
explains
Act
it.
by the sound of things.
If I can have 2 more questions, please. In recent years, the City of Bunbury has shifted to planting more mature trees rather than saplings. Could you provide the current percentage of newly planted trees that are more established?
CEO, might have to take that one on notice? Or-
I would suggest, yeah, Mayor, if we could take that on notice, that would.
Thank you. And the other question is, the city has also implemented additional changes in their tree planting practices over the past few years to improve the tree survival rates. Could we also get an outline of these changes and and share any available data on current tree survival rates compared to the previous couple of years? Thank you.
Got that data at hand, CEO?
No, so thank you, Mayor. If you're happy, we will take that on notice and provide that with the other response.
I've also forwarded those questions to.
Okay, great. Thank you. We'll get those responses provided to you. Councillor Broad?
Thanks, Mr Mayor. My question is, what are the proposed timelines and planning requirements for any development that may occur on Lot 21 after the sale?
I'll put should it be sold rather than after the sale, but should this proceed? CEO, you have a response to that?
So, should the land be sold, it would be subject to a development application like any other parcel of land. So, the owner would, put forward a planning application that would need to then be assessed under our all of our planning rules and policies and the ARC codes, etc. So there will be no time frame that's associated with it'll be up to the owner of the site to progress that.
Thank you. And one more, Mr Mayor. How will the council ensure that the development aligns, if there is a development, aligns with the community's vision for the area?
It'd be sold as is, I'd imagine, Councillor Broad. So I'd imagine, obviously, whatever the development was to be along there, they would have to go through any planning process they would need to go through. So whether that's a building permit, whether that's obviously DA in the first point, and obviously whatever processes would need to occur through that process would go through a planning process. Ultimately, there's delegated authority for DA approvals, and if it's outside any of those, it would need to come to council for a further resolution. But of course, in terms of that process would run that, but they would be restricted by any planning codes or building codes that they'll need to stick to. But CEO, do you have any further comment on that?
No further comment from me, Mayor.
And just to add on from that, so currently it's zoned as R15.
Correct.
The likelihood of any proponent coming back to have it increased to an R40, that's not something that can be, I'm assuming, can't be monitored at this stage?
You couldn't put a likelihood or anything on that, Councillor Broad. Anyone who owns any parcel of land can put a planning application in for change. Anything that would require that would require a scheme amendment to the current scheme, because that's what the zoning is.
Yep.
So similar, if someone had a block in East Bunbury and wanted to do a change to it, you'd have to go through a scheme amendment, which would go through a planning process, which is a fair bit of significant work to do that. Would obviously need to get a council resolution. It would ultimately be decided on by the Minister for Planning if there was any other changes to that. The current zoning is what they can do, and obviously any changes to that, they would need to go through a scheme amendment process to do that.
Okay. Thank
CEO,
you.
anything further to add on that?
Nothing further, Mayor.
Councillor Turner?
Ask a couple other questions.
Sure.
Should this recommendation not get passed, can the Country Landscape Scaping who has made the offer, can they take that to SAT?
No, because this is a decision, this is full discretion of council to either approve this, the same as if you were selling your house, if you owned a house. There's been an offer received, it's gone through now the legislative process, and council will now ultimately decide next week whether we want to proceed or not proceed, but that'll be the end of the matter, and there's no recourse for council not to.
And then also, if it wasn't to proceed, what's the next step? Does it just sit there, or what's the?
Yeah, look, at this stage, it's zoned. So there was a petition, obviously, that was requested council to consider going through a rezoning process. As I just indicated, there is a process to go through a rezone change, which would require a bit more work and need some more information on that. If this is to fail next week or not be supported at this stage, it's basically that the land hasn't been sold, but it doesn't stop any other potential offer coming in at a future date. And that would be obviously considering there's an executive recommendation there, so if this isn't passed, council would need to resolve why they didn't, and that may be simply that there's no appetite to sell this land at this stage. There was alternative recommendations they could be, but I would give some consideration for those, if anyone are thinking of that, what they would put up and what process they would want to go through from that as well. But at this stage, it's just simply dealing, do we accept this offer or not accept this offer? Councillor Gasson?
Excuse me, Mr Mayor. So we've engaged with Department of Biodiversity, Conservation Attractions, DBCA. We've had some responses. A delegation came here a few months ago and stood up and mentioned about and provided evidence about the nesting of turtles on this property. So, and they provided me some public documents on that. And they've also provided it to council at the delegation. I'm just wondering, has that been disclosed to DBCA and to the seller? I can just read one
I'll ask the question because I'm assuming you're going to be reading some of the stuff which I may suggest you save for your debate next week, Councillor Gasser. But I'll just ask if the CEO, if any items that need to be disclosed at DBCA have been disclosed.
Yeah, my understanding, Mayor, is yes.
Specifically this one about turtle sightings by Bunbury turtle trackers. The brown points shown on the nests have been recorded at 89 Beach Road between 2020 and 2026. Has that specifically been disclosed?
CEO's comment, he was aware that it had been, but CEO?
Again, Mayor, my understanding is yes.
Okay. That'll do for now, Mr.
Further questions on this item? Okay, thank you. And we will deal with this item next week and decision will be made next week. Thank you. Item 10, you're more than welcome to stay if you like. We have a couple of items left, but if you want to get home, you can also go home. Item 10.4.3 is we have impartial interest from two members here. It's there is the confidential attachment to that. So if there's any questions on the confidential attachment, we'll go behind closed doors. If there's any general questions, happy to take them. Yeah, are they around, how general are they? Or are they about the contract itself? Ask questions and I'll determine if we need to respond.
Excuse me, Mayor.
Basically what's involved
Sure.
with
Okay,
Just pause 1 second. Can we just leave?
sure. Councillor Brown and Councillor Gosek are going to leave the room for this part of the meeting. Which we still have a quorum. Good. Which doesn't matter, it's a briefing anyway, so it's fine. Thank you. See you next week. Yep.
So basically what's involved in the development application fee, and what's the usual practice, is this usual practice to waive a fee?
Yeah, look, just so we can speak more openly, I might just ask that we go behind closed doors because we might talk about the contract itself. So we'll go behind closed doors for the interim. Thank you. Declare this meeting closed at 6:19. Thank you all very much.